You are listening to part 4 of our 8-part series, Colds and Flus, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. How are you?
I'm just fine. I don't have to ask you whether it was sauerkraut, elderberry, or astragalus, because I suspect the answer would be all three.
All three, actually. And, last week you told a story, and I was thinking, what a woman, your use of astragalus and all the other herbs that you used for the bite that you've had. And I just use mine in chai tea. so, but I do like it.
So you add some astragalus to some tea that you make?
I do. I just make a chai tea that I got off the internet, and so I'll add that root to it as well.
Uh-huh. And how long does that tea steep for?
I usually let it steep quite a while since there's not actually tea in it. It doesn't become bitter, so I let it go all day, and I just reheat it as I need to. I don't really have a set time.
Definitely getting the good from that astragalus root, because it does require kind of a long extraction.
Yeah.
As a dried root. That sounds wonderful.
It is. It's very nice, especially in the winter.
My daughter has been making mullein chai.
Ooh.
Yeah, we'll be talking about mullein in show 7, and I'll give you that recipe.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you.
At that point, just a few weeks away from today, but let's see, we're focusing on antivirals.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure I can hear some of the listeners out there going, I thought she'd never get to it. Here she's talking about colds and flus. How come she doesn't tell us which herbs are antivirals? She told us they were virals. Viruses, why don't we just kill them with antiviral herbs? And, again, it's a conceptual difficulty, and that is that it's pretty impossible to kill viruses. They're just a whole, because, again, a virus is us, right? You have to do injury to yourself to kill the virus. Now, that said, we are discovering that there are indeed some herbs which seem to either indirectly, like astragalus, through bringing up the nourishment of certain kinds of cells in the immune system, or directly, as with some of the herbs we're going to talk about tonight, that these herbs seem to actually enable our bodies to get rid of viruses with far less damage to ourselves. You may ask, what are the great antivirals of modern medicine? And the truth of the matter is, there hardly aren't any, right? What's the great drug that's used against colds? There isn't any great drug that's used against colds. What's the great drug that's used against flus? There isn't any great drug. There is the antiviral, the cyclovir family of antivirals, which is used against shingles. But they are not, universally tolerated or successful. And this, again, is because it is very difficult to kill a virus without injuring ourselves. It's very difficult for us to formulate a drug that can kill the virus without doing some severe damage to the cell in which the virus has taken up residence. So, we're going to look at 3 herbs in this show that you may or may not have heard of. One of them probably, and one of them maybe, and one of them probably not. But 3 herbs that seem to have some value as antivirals, and that have some specific uses against colds and the flu. Boneset as I mentioned in our first show, is so named because the flu used to be called break bone fever. And, it really can feel like that, can't it? Can just feel like your
Mm-hmm.
bones are being torn apart when you
Yeah.
have the flu. I was very surprised to find how deeply effective a dropper full of Boneset tincture is in relieving that muscle ache. It seems to help the immune system deal with the virus without sending out that chemical messenger that makes the muscles ache. And it's also effective after the fact. It seems to help clear that chemical messenger from the body very, very quickly. Now, because Boneset is kind of a generic word, and it is sometimes used to refer to comfrey, symphytum, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about eupatorium here. Talking about Eupatorium perfoliatum. It's a very beautiful plant, actually related to echinacea and lettuce and artichokes and chamomile and a huge number of other plants. And it blooms in the late summer, early fall with big kind of fluffy white blossoms. And it's not really common in my area, but in places where you find it, you will often find more than one plant. And I was driving home along my road one late summer, early autumn, and suddenly, where there had never been before, there was a large patch of Boneset, the Eupatorium perfoliatum, and I said to myself, oh, something is coming. So I went out and bought some 100-proof vodka, came back with my herb cutting scissors, and harvested the tops of the plant, the stalk, the leaves, the flowers, cut them up, put them in a jar, and made a quart of Boneset flower top tincture. And it was that year that we had the big scare, the big flu scare, that there might be a killer flu. That year it turned out that it wasn't. But I was very glad that I had a quart of Boneset tincture on hand, the specific herb known to help our bodies deal with the flu and deal with the flu in a way that keeps us fairly free and fairly safe from injuring ourselves while we get rid of the virus. I don't know if Boneset tincture is still a general item of commerce. 200 years ago, in the United States, Boneset was considered one of the most important of the herbs to have, so that you would have something to help you deal with any fever or any sickness that you got during the winter. But it has lost adherence. It is not a particularly sexy herb. It doesn't taste really great. And after all, if all it does is help get us through the flu, well, we already gave you a whole bunch of better choices. Still in all, I'm glad that Boneset is there and available to me. And if I'm feeling really like I need it, I'm certainly not adverse to it. St. John's wort is the name that I give to a heating plant. You can find various herbalists who will tell you if a plant is heating or cooling, or if you know a little bit about the plant, you can also figure it out yourself. I say that St. John's wort is a heating plant because it grows in the hottest, sunniest, driest places it can find, and it blooms on summer solstice. In conversations, it has said I harvest the sunshine and return it to you in the winter so that you will feel warm and smile. To me, that's a pretty clear indication that this is a warming plant. Boneset is considered to be a neutral plant, as is astragalus and elderberry. So when we were talking about overheating colds and overcooling colds, we talked a little bit about some foods that could help cool and heat us. But as we continue on in our exploration of these herbs, I will let you know how the herbs affect that overheating, overcooling dance and play that is going on there. St. John's wort, of the things we've been talking about, is the first thing that is actively heating, that actively brings heat into the body. And one of my long-ago teachers actually thought that that was how St. John's wort, also known as St. John's wort, could kill viruses. She said that it heated them up. She says just went into there, and just like a laser, it just like heated them up and kills them. And it is quite fascinating to see that St. John's wort, that's Hypericum perforatum, does seem to be able to slip into where the virus is hiding inside the cell and to either lure it out and take care of it there, or to somehow get something into the cell as well, which takes care of the virus. All I can say is that Hypericum seems to be pretty sneaky when it comes to dealing with virus. You don't usually think of St. John's wort as an herb that you might want to use if you have a cold or a flu. Many people think of it as an herb that they would use to help improve their mood. If they felt depressed, if they felt blue, if they had SAD during the wintertime, they would say, well, yes, the scientific studies show that it helps as much as drugs for most cases of depression. And my only problem with that is it's just not that common a thing to me, depression, as a cold is. I figure just about everybody is going to have a cold, if not this year, then next year, and blessed be, may you never suffer from depression. I do understand that for those who do, it is a daily event, and how wonderful that they have Hypericum perforatum tincture. Tincture is the only safe way to take it, that they have that available for them to use, and it certainly can safely be used on a daily basis. But for the rest of us, I'm really hoping to encourage us to think a little outside the box with Hypericum perforatum, or even just keep thinking inside the box, but bring some other things in there with us. Now, one of my favorite uses for it, since I'm not depressed, but a lot of it grows around me and I want to use it, is that it completely eliminates muscle aches. So we have here an herb whose constituents are strongly antiviral and whose constituents can ease and very, very quickly muscle pain and muscle aches. Wow! To me, that suggests that St. John's wort is a really good choice for me if I feel a cold or a flu coming on, and for some reason I don't think that my immune system has had enough to get ready for this event. So we've spent 3 shows talking about supporting, strengthening, and nourishing the immune system. so that if we get a cold or a flu, the duration is shorter and the symptoms are less. And we've talked about things like sauerkraut, elderberry, and astragalus that can be used as a regular, although it doesn't have to be daily, part of the diet to see to it that our immune system is fully nourished. But we don't always get a cold or a flu when we have had the opportunity to take care of ourselves in the way that we would like to. And this is where the antiviral herbs come in. We say, I'm going to use some herb that is going to go right in there and actually effectively deal with the virus as an ally of the immune system, is all I can say. I know that when I'm working against a virus, and when I was working against this Lyme spirochete that was trying to colonize my body, hypericum was one of my allies. As I felt it trying to move into my joints and trying to move into my muscles, I started taking dropperful doses of tincture of fresh hypericum. It's the herb in flower tinctured from the fresh flowering puffs that is effective as an antiviral. And there's an interesting kind of aside here in that there are several active constituents in hypericum, many of which have actually been found to be antiviral. The one which is the strongest antiviral was actually extracted and then synthesized and made into a drug. But it turns out that that one particular alkaloid, that one particular constituent, causes sun sensitivity. In using lavish amounts of tincture of hypericum for a variety of very common, ordinary kind of household things, I have found that there is no sun sensitivity at all. As a matter of fact, I had dinner a couple of weeks ago with one of my very first apprentices. I think I'm up to apprentice 300 and something, and she was apprentice 6. And she said, I've been using hypericum oil on my skin and hypericum tincture internally for so many years now that I think it's really changed how my skin and my body relate to the sun and relate to things that come into my body. And I said, well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I get exactly the same sense, that it's not just an on the site, thanks, I can help you right now deal with this, but that the more that we use St. John's wort, the more that she teaches our bodies how to have the healthy immune response that we are capable of. It's as though hypericum takes us by the hand and leads us there. Now, there's another word for this that is used by herbalists, and that's adaptogen. That we could say that some plants show us how to adapt in a wide variety of circumstances, how to be more flexible. This is certainly one of the things that I'm getting at when I'm talking about nourishing the immune system the wise woman way, that we don't want to force things, but we want to allow the immune system to be adaptive and to respond in its own way. Chief among the adaptogenic herbs that are gaining real notoriety among American herbalists and being used more and more is a plant now known as Eleuthero. It used to be called Siberian ginseng, and there was some complaint about that. It is indeed native to Russia and to the cold parts of Russia, so the Siberian part is right. But it's not really a ginseng. And so people thought that that was a misrepresentation of it. And rather than make up a different new name for it, people have simply taken to calling it by a shortened form of its botanical name, which is Eleutherococcus centicosus. And so Eleuthero is what you'll now find this root under. It is a nourishing herb, so it is considered to be fairly neutral. It does grow in places where it is very cold, but it grows in the ground. And the ground, of course, is insulated. So rather than having much of a cooling effect, again, it is considered to have more of a neutral effect. Eleuthero protects the immune system, enhances the immune system, and strengthens the immune system. It is especially good for stabilizing the production of a wide variety of cells in the immune system. And it is very protective of all of the organs, especially the liver, the adrenals, and the central nervous system. It increases our endurance, and it increases our stamina. So there is nothing specific in terms of the scientific literature showing that Eleuthero would be effective against colds and flus. But herbalists are getting the impression that it does. Now, many times what has happened is that people who work with the plants have an idea about where a plant has a strength, where a plant has a power, how a plant can really be more effectively used. And science then comes along, as it were, to confirm that. I often tell the story of how basically all of the herbals that were written up until about 40 years ago said that you shouldn't use St. John's wort if you were depressed. And I asked St. John's wort why that should be so, and she laughed at me and said, well, it's just silly. I make people happy. And I started repeating this conversation and telling people the hypericum would make them happy. And many, many people picked up on that. We all want to feel happy. And so what we wound up with was a great handful of scientific studies actually comparing Hypericum perforatum against various drugs that are in current use, and finding, especially for mild to moderate depression, that it is highly effective. But we didn't take an herb that has been used that way for thousands of years and then look for something in it. We started using it because the plant told us about a special ability that it has and a special way that it wants to interact with us or to be more available to us. And that's the feeling that I'm getting, and I think that others are getting about Eleuthero. That perhaps this was a plant that for some reason, grew, shall we say, at the ends of the earth and was, say, hidden from view. Something that we didn't think about very much. But as herbal medicine has become, shall we say, more worldly, more cosmopolitan, as we have reached across borders so that American herbalists use Chinese herbs and herbalists in South America use herbs from Europe, as we have come to appreciate and know and value each other's use of herbs, that the herbs themselves speak to us and help us to understand abilities that they have that perhaps previously hadn't been so important for us because, diseases change. Actually, one of the reasons that I like talking about colds and flus is that they don't change very much at all. So the things that we have found to be useful for them for a long time are probably still going to consider to be very, very good. I'd like to read just a little bit to you from Stephen Foster's account of Eleuthero. He says, this herb has been catapulted to widespread use as an adaptogen and an immune system strengthener, thanks to research in Russia, China, Japan, Europe, and the United States. Few, if any, medicinal plants have been the focus of such intensive research for the past 30 years. Studies have shown that various preparations of Eleuthero build nonspecific immunity, improve weak nerves, reduce the incidence of heart disease, dilate the blood vessels, increase cerebral blood flow, reduce blood sugar, and actually have a static effect on certain types of cancer. Does it sound like a cure-all? Well, we don't want to use that word, so we say an adaptogen. Breckman, the leading researcher on plant adaptogens, defines adaptogen as a subject that is 1, innocuous, causing no or minimal side effects, 2, a substance that has a non-specific action increasing resistance to a wide range of environmental or other physical factors, and 3, a substance that has a normalizing action in the body irrespective of a diseased state. Eleuthero, coccicentricosis, you may still find it as Siberian ginseng. The tincture is an excellent way to take it. Remember, when we're thinking about these herbs, that powdered herbs in capsules are the most expensive, least effective, and most dangerous way to use herbs. That's why I'm suggesting that we use the herbs we're talking about brewed up as teas, as infusions, or as tinctures. That's the least expensive, safest, and most effective way to get the herbs into us. Well, we've come just about to the end of another show and the end of another month, but we're going to roll right in to our next month together and keep looking at herbs that we can use to help with the immune system and thus help with colds and flus. So we have some things that are far more exotic this week than we had last week. Do you want another homework assignment? Find out something about Eleutherococcus syndicosis or Hypericum perforatum or about Eupatorium perfoliatum. And if you don't like that homework assignment, then I will give you a homework assignment that prefigures next week, which is this week. Get rid of all the hand sanitizing washes in your house. We'll talk about why next week, right here at Time Monk Radio. Meanwhile, come and visit me at SusanWeed.com and visit the Wise Woman Bookshop, where you can find my books, my correspondence courses, workshops at my home and near you. Green blessings, everyone.
Thank you, Susan. You've been listening to part 4 of our 8-part series, Colds and Flus, The Wise Woman Way with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.